These are the Chat City interviews from 103.2 Preston FM.
That's Boyz II Men with Back for Good, cover version of the hit by... Who was that by? Who was that group? Good morning, Norman Harris. Who was that group?
I wasn't expecting the question.
No. Thanks for coming, Norman. I think it was Take That. I've given myself time to think now. Yes. Norman, you're from the Jubilee Sailing Trust, aren't you?
Well, I actually sail with them. I'm not an official part of the Sailing Trust. But
okay, you're a volunteer?
I'm a volunteer,
All
yes.
right. And how did you get involved with them?
Well, it was interesting. I was in the village. I live in Newton, and one of my acquaintances in the village is in a wheelchair, and I just got talking to him about what he was doing, and he said he was going off on this sailing ship, and I thought, how do you manage that in a wheelchair? But he goes with his carer, and he was telling me what a fantastic experience it was for him. So I contacted the JST, and off I went.
Were you a sailor already?
Oh, I love sailing, yes. It does have an advantage, I must admit.
Now, it occurs to me that I might have heard your voice on the radio before, and even on Chat City. And was that possibly last week?
That was last week, and I was talking about the Kirkham Twinning Association with Huey.
Ah, that's right. Yes, that's where it's come from. So, Jubilee Sailing Trust, you got involved. How long ago was that, Norman?
Oh, that must be about 10 years ago. It's I actually, when I inquired about it, about how to get involved, I found out that what I could do was to go along and do maintenance on the ship, which gave me a feel for the ship. I'm a engineer. I restore vintage cars and things, and just to be told I can go and play with an engine was great fun. But they actually put me down painting parts of the ship when I first arrived. But I went down for 2 weeks and had a great time.
These ships have diesel engines then, do they?
It has 2 big V8 diesel engines, yes.
But I thought these were sailing ships.
They're sailing ships, but it's quite difficult these days coming into a port as a sailing ship. In the old days, you'd get a crew out with 8 people in a boat rowing you in. Now it's so much easier to lower the sails and just motor gently in and moor that way.
Now these sailing boats are not what you see around in the dock basin at Preston, are they?
Oh no.
These are a special kind of ship.
These are 3-masted. The sort of thing you'd see on the image. People may have an image of the Cutty Sark, something like that. 3 masts, 18 sails, about 100 feet high masts, and something like 130 feet long. And they just look up. If you look on the Jubilee Sailing Trust website, jst.org, you'll see some of the pictures of these ships. There's only 2 of them, and they are just magnificent. And
I presume it actually takes quite a few people to sail a ship like that.
It does. The way it works is that there is a fixed crew of maybe 9 or 10 people, that the captain, the first mate, the engineers and the navigators and so on. But they can't sail the ship on their own because there isn't apart from the anchor winch, there isn't a single power winch on the ship. Everything is done by hand. So what you end up with is typically a crew of about maybe 40 people, and that can be 50% able-bodied and 50% disabled, and everything is done by hand, which is part of the enjoyment. It's all getting together.
And you sail to distant shores?
Oh yes, I've recently a couple of years ago, I sailed from Liverpool to Gran Canaria via Marin in Spain, which was 2,000 miles. And the Lord Nelson, I'm actually joining it for the last leg of its round-the-world voyage. It's done a most incredible voyage, and it's been publicising the concept of having disabled people on board a sailing ship. And I'm picking it up in Halifax in Nova Scotia and sailing it to Iceland, and then the Faroe Islands, and then we're coming up the Thames into London, which, raising Tower Bridge, will be magnificent.
You say that almost casually, that you're going to Nova Scotia and via...
Oh, yes, it's...
It's like getting a bus, isn't it?
It is. It is a bit of an undertaking, I must admit. I'll be away for quite a long time, and the time at sea is not the most exciting of things, but on the other hand, it's just enjoyable sailing it.
So what's the philosophy behind the this trust then, Jubilee Sailing Trust?
The philosophy behind the trust is to get disabled people working alongside able-bodied people and basically giving them every opportunity to do everything but they possibly can to help the ship. And when people come, when you read some of the stories of people in wheelchairs there's a story in the latest magazine of a guy who was in a car crash, ended up in a wheelchair, and reading the guy's story about what he was able to achieve after being in a wheelchair for potentially the rest of his life. It's just amazing.
So you take people with physical disabilities, but you mentioned a blind person earlier on when I was talking to you. You take anyone with any kind of disability?
We take basically any sort of disability that, it covers typically, varying degrees of sight, varying degrees of hearing, loss of limbs, loss of fingers, being in a wheelchair. The only thing that the Jubilee Sailing Trust doesn't take is mental disability, simply because you can be quite dangerous sailing a square rigger at night in high winds, and you can't have somebody who can't respond to a simple command, which may save their life or may save somebody else's life, and you can't have them up a mast. It'd be very difficult.
It's a very challenging environment then.
Well, I've sailed it at night in a force 8 gale, and believe me, that's a challenging environment, but absolutely every sense is awakened, and it's a fantastic experience. I mean, just an example, my watch leader, Peter, is registered blind, and I couldn't believe the first time I went on a voyage, I had to have Peter take me up the mast to what's called the first platform. You might think I was the crow's nest, to explain to me the safety aspects of it. And I thought, this is incredible. There's a blind guy leading me up the what they call the ratlins, the ladders up the side of the mast.
So it's all about disabled people maximising their abilities.
Absolutely. When you see disabled people on board, I don't mean to sound patronising, but it's amazing what these people can do out of their normal comfort zone. I mean, we have what I love about being on the ship is that the disabled people are not treated any differently to the people who are able-bodied. I mean, I sailed recently with a guy, John, and he was almost totally blind. But nobody sort of walked up and wandered round with him, holding his hand. And if you saw John going the wrong way, you just said to him, "Where are you going, mate?" "I'm going to my cabin." "Right, you're going the right way," and just let him go. There's no point in sort of taking his hand and leading them all the way. He was perfectly happy just wandering along on the outside of the decking on the ship to get to his cabin.
So blind people, people who are deaf, people with physical disabilities, you have them on the voyages, and they take a full part in crewing the vessel.
Exactly that.
What do you get from this?
What do I get from
you
it?
Personally, yeah.
Well, I think it's, again, it's difficult not to sound patronising, but I think it's wonderful to watch people who have lived maybe a relatively quiet life because of their disability, to be out on a ship hauling ropes. And basically, I mean, everybody gets, regardless of your disability, everybody gets a go at helming the ship. Now, when you're, for argument's sake, if you're visually impaired, then you sit at the helm, a classic big steering wheel like you see on every Pirates of the Penzance type film, and when you see that sort of there's alongside when the captain says, "Right, steer 140," there's a great big display, 6 inches square. Each number is 6 inches to give you a visual impression if you can't see it very well. And there's also an audio compass which just calls out 140. And that's it.
Yeah, that's nice and simple and makes a huge difference.
And it does. And the chair that you sit in is adjustable in all directions, so as you can get comfortable sat next to the actual steering wheel itself.
So it's all about integrating people with disabilities and those who are able-bodied.
Yeah.
You obviously are an experienced sailor.
Yes.
If somebody wanted to assist with this and they weren't an experienced sailor but they were able-bodied, can they join you?
What happens is, when I first joined, I was a little bit concerned that when they said, we have what's called a buddy system, and it means that I, as an able-bodied person, when we get on the ship, would be allocated a disabled, in the broadest possible sense, person to be their buddy, i.e. just to look after them, make sure that they get where they're supposed to be and any problems they've got. But what wouldn't, so there's two categories. There's partially disabled and severely disabled. What they wouldn't do is to take somebody like me, who's never met a severely disabled person, and say, right, you're the buddy now, because what the people that severely disabled do would be tend to bring along their carer, like the person I met in the village. Because you can't just throw somebody who's a perfect stranger and say, right, you need to wash me and toilet me. It doesn't work like that. Uh-huh. What I've had as partners are people who've been deaf and people who've been partially sighted. And that does make a world of difference. It's just that communication that you need all the time.
This is not an organisation I've heard of, but it's been around for quite a while, hasn't it?
Well, it was started about 1976. And the first ship, the Nelson, the one I sail on, was launched in 1986. And it was such a success as, with the disabled concept of sailing people, that the JST then got enough funds to build the Tenacious, which is a very similar but slightly bigger ship. And now the two sail round. The way it works is that during our summer, the two ships will sail, for instance, into the Baltic or into the Mediterranean or down to Spain or wherever. But during the winter, which is how the last voyage I did, we take the ships to... Tenacious tends to go across the Atlantic to the Caribbean. So as the people who want to sail on it fly to the Caribbean, sail around the Caribbean on the ship and then fly home. Or alternatively, like I did, take it down to the Canaries, and the people fly to the Canaries and then sail around the Canaries in much warmer weather. There's no point in trying to fly. I have flogged around the English Channel with the seawater freezing on the deck, which, whilst enjoyable in a masochistic sort of way, is not ideal for most people.
It's often a funny colour as well, isn't it, the English Channel?
Yes.
So do you also work in partnership with local organisations like Galloway Society for the Blind, Disability Equality Northwest?
Well, I personally, I'm not sure. You mean the JST work or me?
Yeah.
No, I don't think the JST work. I don't honestly know, but I work for Galloway's as a technician on the, strange enough, the Farmer's Guardian. My wife reads the Farmer's Guardian. We put it on flash drives, and I do all the technical bit and transfer it across.
All right. So it's talking books.
It's talking newspapers, yes.
And I believe that you also do some forces rehabilitation in the Jubilee Sailing Trust as well.
It's not part of the system that I've got involved in, but I think that is part of the concept that disabled soldiers damaged in wars and so on can go on the Jubilee Sailing Trust to get their confidence back and do all these sort of things that they never thought they would do again.
Exciting stuff.
Yes.
So if disabled people want to expand their horizons,
yes, or
indeed anyone else who's an experienced sailor perhaps,
yeah,
then they need to look at your website, surely.
Yes, definitely look at the website. It's www.jst.org.uk. And I personally do talks on it, so if you want to contact me to come and give your local group a talk, my name is Norman Harris and my telephone number is 01772 683 827.
That's Norman Harris for talks on the Jubilee Sailing Trust, and his number is a Preston number 683 821.
No.
I got that no, I got that wrong.
683 827.
Right, I wrote 7
and read it as 1.
I read it as 1. So it's 683 827.
Yes.
All right, thanks very much, Norman. That's really interesting. And when's your next voyage?
My next voyage is starting on August the 10th. I'm going to Halifax in Nova Scotia to do some maintenance on the ship for 3 days.
Yep.
And then I'm leaving on about the 14th to sail to...
You're sailing to the Canary Islands.
No, you're
Spain?
going the wrong way. I'm saying
Iceland.
Your geography's out of it. I'm sailing to Iceland. The Canaries is a hell of a long way.
But you're not staying in Iceland, or are you?
I'm going from Iceland to the Faroe Islands.
The Faroe Islands.
And then I'm coming from the Faroe Islands along the south coast of England and turning up the Thames, and we're going to Open Tower Bridge and with our sister ship Tenacious and have a great time.
That'll be exciting.
I'm looking forward to the party, I must admit.
That's going to be really exciting.
Yes.
Thanks very much for coming to talk to us, Norman.
You're very welcome. Great pleasure. That's
Norman Harris from the Jubilee Sailing Trust, and as he said, he can give talks, and his phone number, and I will get it right this time, is 01772 683 827, and Norman is smiling at me, so that is the right number.
If you have any news or events you'd like to share with Huey and our Chat City team, why not give us an email, chatcity@preston.fm.